My question is about karma. So, I realize that there is a sort of karma when you die, because it's like, based on what you did in your life, it affects what happens next life. But my question is there a karma in your lifetime? And how does that connect to consciousness?
Let's borrow Bernardo Kastrup's image or analogy of the whirlpool in the river. You've heard me describe it before, just briefly for those that haven't. Imagine consciousness instead of an open empty space. Imagine it as a vast river. The water of the river is the stuff of consciousness. And in various places in the river, the river coalesces into a whirlpool. So the whirlpool is a localization of the river. Just as we previously said, the cloud was a localization of the sky. So in this analogy, each of our minds is like a localization of consciousness, just as each whirlpool is a localization of the river. Now, each whirlpool is made out of the same river. Each whirlpool is just a temporary limitation of the river, and each whirlpool has a slightly different shape, a slightly different size, a slightly different configuration. Just as each of our minds is a slightly different shape. It contains slightly different thoughts and feelings, etc. But they're all made out of the same river of consciousness. Yes, and just as no particular whirlpool divides the river into separate parts, so none of our minds divide consciousness into separate parts or sections. It's a single flowing river, and each of our minds are precipitated within it. Now, the content of the whirlpool, that is the shape or size of the whirlpool, that is the content of our minds. It's made up of thoughts, images, feelings, sensations, perceptions. Yeah? So every single thought we have slightly alters the configuration of the whirlpool, just as every movement of the whirlpool affects the overall structure of the whirlpool. Yes? So not only the influence is coming from outside the whirlpool, let's say that there are a series of ripples in the river, and as those ripples flow downstream, they encounter your whirlpool. Those ripples will affect the shape of your whirlpool. Yes? Those are the influences that come into your mind from outside. Not from outside consciousness, but from outside your particular finite mind. So these are the influence that come to us. For instance, now, my words are like ripples from the river of consciousness that are entering your whirlpool and transforming it, albeit very slightly. There is a change in the configuration of your mind as a result of this conversation, just as when you asked your question, there was a change in the configuration of my mind. There was a ripple was sent through the river of consciousness from your whirlpool to mine. Yes? And so all of our whirlpools, all of our minds are affecting each other all the time. So when, just to comment on what you said about the effect of karma after death. Death, in this analogy, would be the dispersal of a whirlpool. The whirlpool loses its integrity. The form of the whirlpool disbands into the river. But the whirlpool doesn't just vanish. Its motion gradually unwinds, and as it unwinds, it sends ripples out into the river, so that long after the whirlpool has vanished, the residues of the energy that sustained it while it existed are still present in the broader medium of the river. And those energies, those ripples, may gather together again downstream and coalesce into another little whirlpool that will grow into a big whirlpool, and that whirlpool will contain the residues of the previous whirlpool. So that's a model of reincarnation, karma being transferred from one body mind to another.